Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of critical acclaim, looking at albums that are fairly universally praised between both critics and casual listeners. Today, we're going to be looking at a track off of Tori Amos's Little Earthquakes album. This one is called Precious Things, and it's actually a live performance from a 1998 show. Interestingly, I think I've already seen a performance from this show for the track Waitress, which really blew me away. I don't remember who told me to check that out. It was a comment on the last Tori Amos video we did, which was probably like a year ago, so I apologize for not remembering who it was. But that song really made me want to listen to more Amos. I'm really excited to listen to another track from that same performance. So without further ado, let's dive into Precious Things by Tori Amos. Oh man, slight desync between the audio and video. I'm gonna have to try my best not to look at the video. I was curious why they were applauding for this. I mean, it's it's really great atmosphere writing, but it was a weird place to clap. And yeah, Tori came on stage, so it's a tense kind of levity on top of such a very rooted, weighted intro. Not where I would have expected them to take the music. It's a shame her piano work got completely drowned out by the guitar in the last section. Some fry. there's a very delicate balance being walked this entire song. Really leaning into that. That was not a stable note, and just laid on it. It's a very peculiar combination of pop and grunge. If nothing else, completely captivating. So I want to extrapolate a little bit on the comment I made about walking the line between pop and grunge. It's not necessarily that there's grunge composition in here or even particularly poppy composition in here, but it's about the feelings of those two genres. And another way I could say that there's a very careful line being walked between balancing a very controlled, palatable, traditional type of performance with the dirty rawness that grunge brought to the table. It's very interesting to hear the track move between those. Well, first of all, we have a very eerie, I don't know if eerie is the right word. We have a tense opening with those long held guitar tones, tons of bite, lots of distortion. We have the tom and snare work from the drums. Very tribal almost. Uh, and we go from that into this quick moving, high range piano line, which I couldn't but help hear very closely. Not in the same pitches, but in the same concept as whatever that track is about making my way downtown, walking fast. That piano line. I don't know what the song's called. I don't know who sings it, but just the frequent, constant 16th note movement in the higher register of the piano And even the brightness of the harmonic component to it, the chords that are utilized, they do lean onto the edge of tension, but they're not really tense, gritty chords that are being played here. It's still more of a brighter, optimistic part of this line for, a good 75% of it at least. And so we do have this back and forth there between the grit of the band and the properness, the palatability of the piano playing. Really, the only piano notes I felt that aired on the side of the grittier rockness is our opening two or three chords, which seem to be just random collections of lower notes. They might have been specifically selected, but the end result was just this low, muddy booming that came on as she sat down at the piano. We also have the pairing of her vocal styles. There's quite a bit of vocal fry in this, whether it's the exclusive use of it in that middle bridge section, or as we saw closer to the end, allowing that raspiness to come out almost as a sense of desperation amongst the lyrics. But it's also paired against in those later moments an almost operatic singing style, a very controlled head voice with wide vibrato, very traditionally pop, kind of leaning towards an operatic sounds, very palatable. And hearing the mashup of those two sounds just smashed together beat to beat, it is fascinating listening to this song the way that it is, this mashup of styles that seemingly couldn't be further apart, and listening to how they blend and bleed into one another. The guitar work starts out ominous. That's the word I wanted. Not eerie, it's just ominous. You don't really know what's going on. There's a little bit of, not necessarily fear, but something unknown. Right? It's not horror like something scary. And it's the horror of the unknown. It's a fear of not knowing. It's that sort of ominous vibe at the beginning. But the guitars also lighten up quite a bit as we get further into the song. They end up just playing chords. Chords that match up with what the piano's doing. It's sort of more bite, no, more bark than bite, as the sound is gritty with all of that distortion and fuzz and staticness on top of it, the compression, but the notes that are being played are honestly could be played by the left hand of the piano, and the notes would be the same, the vibe would be the same. The big difference is the sound of the instrument. But we also hear some of that grit coming to the piano as well. Tori adds it to her vocal style more as the song goes on, but the piano also leans into these really unstable notes quite often, and it makes the melodies of the track feel, I don't know. Like I said, they're not tense. Even when she decided to lean on that really unstable note, it wasn't a tension. It was just a feeling of wanting to get out of it. It was an anxiety. It wasn't dissonance. It was just one of the least stable notes of the chord, of the key. Usually we use them as leading tones. They help direct us to where we want to go. They are notes that want to be resolved to something stronger. And again, it doesn't add dissonance. It's not a type of tension in that way, but it is it isn't a great feeling. Like, please just go up a half, please. Go down a step and a half, whatever. Like, find some resolution to this. And the piano likes to lean into that as well, but never go straight to a resolution. And so all the piano parts are mostly pretty lines, honestly. I think they would fit in, any singer-songwriter pop adjacent track. There's a darkness to them. There's an edge to them that I don't think would, if you just copied them one to one, wouldn't really fit in that environment. And so, like I said, it's this bleeding, this blending, where there's a huge influence on either one. The band lightens up with the piano, but the piano gets grittier to fit in with the band. It's really interesting to watch this happen because the end result is a track that feels constantly on the edge. There is a lot of beauty to this, but there's a lot of stress. It is, well, for anybody who has a fear of heights, I suppose, getting to the top of a canyon or a mountain or something and just being in awe of the view you have while feeling your heart beating out of your chest because you're right on the edge of this, this cliff or whatever. And just it's this dual feeling there, the beauty and the anxiety. And that's what a lot of this song feels like to me. And it teeters. Sometimes you can ignore that anxiety and you can take in this amazing view, and other times you look down and all you can feel is your mortality. And I feel like the song does that too. It can lean one way or another. The guitar, I mean, the band cut out after the second verse, I think, and we had just the vocals and the piano, and there's still a little bit of anxiety in there. It's not a perfectly resolved concept going on in the piano, but it still airs a bit more on the beautiful side, and she allows her range to kind of push into that head voice and really lean into her strong traditional vocal training. I don't know if she has vocal training, but whatever, the traditional side of her vocals. And then there's other times when everything just lets loose and really starts to lean into that tension. And so it's a song to me that feels on edge, both in a positive and negative way, heightening both the positive and negative components of an experience. And I did find it kind of difficult to breathe through a lot of this. Um, Not in the sense that I was beginning to suffocate or anything, but I think I felt really tense, like my shoulders were up and everything. And when the song was over, I remember letting out, a big exhale. I don't remember if my shoulders dropped or anything, but it's just not a fun song to experience. And so it's really fascinating that, maybe it is because it's so old. Maybe this was a bit more groundbreaking at the time, but if we go by this piece by piece, there's nothing in here that's really odd or strange, especially not for 2023. We have stranger mashups today, um, not just in timbre, but also in sonic quality. Genres get mashed up, uh, but there's something about this that even today has this just, I don't know. I think the last thing I want to touch on before we hit the lyrics is the way that she crafts a vocal melody. Because if we honestly just pay attention to the band, they're pretty straightforward. As I mentioned, aside from our more atmospheric opening, the guitar plays a lot of chords here. The bass does pedal tones throughout a lot of this, primarily focusing on root notes, and the drums are either doing that honestly really cool tom work that they have in the opening, or they're a metronome. They're keeping the time with a couple drum fills here and there. It's all pretty standard rock. The piano has its lick for each section and plays it constantly over and 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 over. The vocal melody is, to me, what elevates the whole thing. The music as a whole is neat, the combining of all of this, but the vocals are the thing that make it so you can't look away. They're the thing that grabs you and says you're not turning this track off. You're going to wait till it's over, and if you're done listening to the album, then that's fine. Or if you're done watching the video or whatever, that's fine, but you're not going to walk away from this until I'm done. And it almost feels chaotic at times, random. Obviously it's not. But pitch. The next time you listen to this, pay very close attention to how and when she decides to change her range. A lot of melodies, whether it's a vocal melody or an instrumental melody, tend to move in linear motions. We will have rising and falling actions, and usually those will be comprised of several notes. If you want to go up an entire octave, you'll find a few notes throughout there and rise up into it. A lot of the times we use the third, the fifth, and then the octave. That's the arpeggio. It's a very popular way to move between notes. A lot of melodies today tend to sit around one note and kind of rise up a little bit and rise down a little bit. We just kind of have this nice small range, maybe just 3, 4 notes tops. We'll play around with those. The idea is that movement tends to be fluid. It makes it more memorable. Hers seems erratic. We'll be here in something that feels a bit comfortable, and then we'll push into her head voice, maybe just for a single syllable, not even a full word, and come back down to finish the word, and then put a little bit of rasp in there for a second, 2 seconds, and then bounce right back up to that higher note, only to have an exasperated exhale at the end of it, almost as if she wants to fully exhaust whatever leftover air she has in her diaphragm, to take in a full breath, or to just emphasize the weight of this sometimes syllable. I don't even know if it's a full note. The melodies don't flow in a traditional sense. And when you pair that with the extra rasp and grit at the end, and the way that her breathing becomes elevated by the end of the track, it isn't just the grit that makes it sound a bit more desperate. There is a obvious complete full control, but an appearance of a lacking of control. It no longer feels like a song so much as somebody screaming into the void. The screaming happens to be more sing-songy than I think most would scream, but it has the same effect as, a post-hardcore vocalist doing clean vocals for a whole song, and as they reach the climax of the track, they switch into a fry scream. She just doesn't need to use the full fry scream. She achieves that same type of tension and elevation through other components of the vocal delivery. And I think it's really fascinating. But, well, I think it's fascinating that this album is as popular as it is. It achieved this critical acclaim. Because normally when people say singer-songwriter, I think of pop adjacent. It's usually popular music with, piano or maybe strings, maybe a little bit more classical influence than your usual pop stuff. And in a sense, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, singer-songwriter to me kind of is just acoustic pop. It can be a bit more expanded, but it's sort of just a deviation from the pop rock, which is electronic instruments, and the electro pop that tends to dominate the pop scene itself. Anyways, though, the thing is that the song itself feels a lot more rooted in rock than it does for singer-songwriter, and I'm curious how many of her fans were along the ride for this one. And also, I guess, alternatively, if this is just her style, because the waitress was also a bit on the heavier side, leaning into the grit of some sort of rock. It might have been grunge too, I don't know. But, well, she also, Tori Amos is the one who covered Raining Blood too, isn't she? She just got a little bit of a rock side to her. Anyways, I'm going to hit some lyrics here and see what's going on with that. So the song lyrically seems to be about uh, Tor- Tori's personal liberation from cliques, religion, and her own sexual liberation as well. The chorus specifically says, "These precious things, let them bleed and wash away, let them break their hold on me." I don't want to be a part of any of this anymore. I'm not going to repair them. I'm not going to try to keep them contained. I just want them gone. And so we see a series of events in our two choruses and our bridge, which musically changed, but might as well be another verse as far as the lyrical context is described. Verse 1 is loosely tied to running away from religion. She grew up in a very conservative Christian household, according to some interviews with her, and all she ever wanted to do was run away, and that's how the song starts, is "So I ran faster." But it mentions that her loyalties turned. She may have ran from the church, but she found something else to take a hold of her. Specifically running after Billy, which I assume might be somebody in her past, but for the most part, it's just a stand in for relationships. Verse 2 is really about that. It says that people kind of regarded her as an ugly girl who did things well. Specifically from interviews, she played the piano well, but she was also friends with the pretty girls, and that tended to be why boys gave her attention, was to get her friend's number, that kind of deal. But that she was so smitten over this little bit of attention that she got that she would hold on to that. And she said, "Can you even believe that? I used to do that. That's so sick." Um, and then the bridge moves into her at a party wanting to know where the pretty girls were, and no one would even tell her. She was ignored at a party, popular enough to be invited, but not popular enough to be a part of. And her just wanting to break away from all of these things that have had a hold on her at one point in her life, whether it's something she subconsciously fell into or it's something that somebody else tried to force on her, which I think is the case for the religion. It is ultimately a song about finding yourself. You grow up with one set of ideals and perspectives, and you realize those aren't the ones you want, and you reach adolescence, you begin to mature, and you have new things that interest you, and you chase after those. And ultimately, you might grow up and find out that what you thought you wanted isn't what you wanted anymore. It is very much, to me, like I said, a song of liberation, but also a coming of age song, moving through several aspects of childhood into the beginnings of possibly a young adulthood, but maybe even as far as I can read it, still sort of the teenage years, which to me is still a kid. Um, and finding out in three specific moments throughout these childhood years of things that society said you should do, or at least her society, her group, her experience, and her realizing, no, actually, that's not what I want. I thought I did, but I really don't. And I think it's really important to make a song about that because we do change as we grow, and I think it's important to evaluate the things that you learn and to reevaluate. I mean, that is the concept of critical thinking, which is sort of the cornerstone of the whole channel here. I only relate it to music for the channel, but it is a core aspect of my life. I have constantly given a critical lens to things, and I am a very different person today than I was a decade ago. Primarily because I figure out what's going on in my life, what things I used to think were the way they should be, and how I might have changed perspective on that. It's a song that I feel very close to, despite not really relating to any of the individual stories themselves within it. But it's a song of trying to break free of old convention and try to figure out who you really are, who you want to be, what you want to be important to you. And I really appreciate that message in a song, and especially one in 1992. It feels pretty standard today. Like, I don't think this would be too confrontational of lyrics. There would definitely be some backlash from specific groups, especially in a US centric perspective, but 1992, I can only imagine being more of a conservative country, that this song probably, what is the term I want for this? Shook some people? I think if people actually saw the lyrics, they would not be too happy about it. I don't know if she had any backlash over this track. It wasn't a single, but of course, 6 years later, she did play it live um, at a pretty big concert, I would guess. I don't know. As usual, though, those are just my thoughts on Tori Amos's Precious Things. What are yours? Put your perspectives, thoughts, ideas, any of that down in the comments section. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. You can find ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, a link to my music, and so much more. There's a bunch of stuff in there. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. Alright, we also have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, see you guys tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we'll continue on with this week's theme of critical acclaim. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.